today is a gentleman by the name of Christopher Stevens Sylvia. He went missing on February 16th, 2015. He was a male, age 28. He was 5'9" and 155 pounds. So again, typical young adult, seemed healthy. He had brown hair, hazel-colored eyes. Clothing he was last seen in was a dark-colored fleece jacket, green camouflage print pants, brown and black hiking boots. So he was explained, or people said he was a very experienced outdoorsman, and his mother mentioned it's very uncharacteristic of him to hike alone or to leave his gear behind, which that'll become important in a second. I've never been a big fan of hiking alone. I know people do it all the time, but it's not something
I'm not a big
I like
solo
to
guy.
do. No. I guess if I lived somewhere near a national park, I'd probably do it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's nice having a second person in case something happens. So,
Absolutely.
our timeline starts for Christopher on February 12th, 2015. So again, hiking the PCT, not at optimal times. Like we said, you want to hike it April, May timeframe. That's when you want to start it. So he started his trek near State Route 74 in Anza. He planned to hike southbound on the PCT from Anza to Campo before contacting friends to pick him up. He was expecting this hike to take him about a week. It's now February 16th, 2015, and he calls a friend and asks to be picked up the next day at a Buddhist temple on Chihuahua Valley Road the next day. Sylvia's roommate went to the designated spot at the agreed-upon time, but Sylvia never showed up. At first, his roommate assumed he just decided not to go to the temple after all, but later on, they realized that, okay, something's wrong. He's now missing. So later that week, search teams from Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties searched in vain for 4 days before, once again, weather forced them to suspend the search and rescue operation. This comes from his brother. So his brother has posted a lot about Christopher's disappearance, and he also adds that there was extensive use of dog teams, choppers, and SAR personnel, but winter storms hampered the search. And this is, again, I hate harping on this, but it always seems in a lot of these strange disappearances, weather always hampers the search and rescue operation. I know David Paulides always mentions this in his books.
Yeah, it's
so
like weather and cave networks.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
for whatever reason.
So, all right. So now it's February 20th, 2015. Another hiker finds Sylvia's gear, including identification, sleeping bag, and backpack laid out alongside the PCT near mile marker 127, not far from Mike's place. Despite a large search effort, Sylvia was never heard from again. So that's where this timeline ends. And don't read the theory I put down, but what do you think happened, Joe?
They found his stuff
Alongside the trail.
and it was like spread out, or like it was just like he had left it there.
It's they said laid out alongside the trail, so I don't know what that exactly means, but let's just assume.
All right, so you would assume if they're quoting it, you'd think if it was like disheveled, they would have mentioned that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming now.
Yep.
I feel like, all right, he doesn't normally go on solo hikes.
Mm-hmm.
His gear was abandoned. I feel like he chose to disappear.
Interesting you say that.
Because like he made a bunch of conscious decisions. Did he leave behind like a note or anything that would like make you think he went out there to harm himself?
Not that I read in my research. So
Okay.
And maybe he did. And
if I'm just going along if I'm going along the reasons why he'd change up his normal routine, it'd either be because he's trying to get away from something or he wants to commit suicide. And I'm just going along, if he's going to do suicide, you feel like he would leave a note, and they typically don't want to be hidden. They want you to find the body, and there'll be like a note to explain why they decided to do that. So if he's just gone, it's almost like he ran away. That's or like to escape something.
Yeah.
That's
so
my vote.
My theory I'm going with suicide on this one, and I will explain why. And
okay.
I came to that theory before that theory, it was your typical exposure accident, but he was experienced. He was an experienced hiker. So I don't think it was that, but I read a lot of posts from his brother, and his brother had mentioned that Christopher had a long history of dealing with depression. Okay. And he even back in 2006 got really drunk and tried to hang himself. Now this was posted by somebody who claims to be Christopher's brother. I have no other evidence that.
Okay, so if we're taking him at his word, he's had a failed attempt on his life. I think that is a big indicator that it potentially could be suicide then.
Yeah, and he's been suffering with depression. His brother mentioned that after the incident in 2006, he hadn't gotten much better since then, and I guess he had just lost a job. And so it sounds like an individual who was having some issues, and maybe...
Like right before the hike, he had just lost a job?
Yeah, it sounded like from what his brother was posting that, I don't know how soon before the hike, but at some point before hiking, he had lost his job at a restaurant that he worked at. So it sounds like this guy...
You got to look at it from the perspective of like someone who's depressed, where that might not seem like a huge deal to somebody, but if you're already on the edge and you feel like the world's out to get you and then that happens, it could be like the straw that broke the camel's back. So I'm kind of leaning more towards your theory now with that information.
Yeah, and I don't like throwing out suicide as a theory lightly. I think in this case, if we take the person that claims to be his brother at face value, long history of depression, has attempted suicide in the past, and the fact that his gear was laid out along the side of the trail, maybe he did leave a suicide note and it blew away, or it's out in the elements. Maybe who knows what happened to it, and they just didn't find it. The other thing people were bringing up in this conversation with his brother was, they didn't find his body. They don't know how he could have done it. I mean, I guess he could have taken, pharmaceuticals with him, or there's a number. We're not going to go into how you would do that. There's a number of ways that could have happened, but I think it's odd. I think it's odd they didn't find him. But I think based on the facts surrounding this individual, I think that's a logical explanation. His brother also did say he was the kind of guy who might just take off. So he said it wouldn't be out of...
I keep going back and forth in my head saying that, like, okay, yeah, it's a high risk for suicide unless he just said, screw it. I'm going to go start over somewhere. I'm just going to like, I'm not happy. Maybe he said he attempted his life while he was drunk. So it could have been just a bad decision when you're drunk and really down on yourself. And he's just like, you know what? I'm going to go out in the woods, leave my gear, and I'm just going to go and start a new life somewhere else and be somebody else. I feel like I like that theory better because it's not such a sad ending.
Yeah. And his brother said it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility 10 years later he would just show up again. So
well, I hope that happens.
I think I will modify. Yeah, I think so for this gentleman. I think it's either suicide or he intentionally left his stuff and just took off, and he's living somewhere else, and hopefully he gets the help he needs and reconnects with his family.